Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm your host, Christine Devlin Eck. Here at the Center for Sacred Window Studies, we explore and expand on conscious postpartum care. We navigate the overlap of caring for others and caring for ourselves. We honor the transitions, not only in giving birth, but in being alive. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Hello, welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm Christine. I'm so happy to welcome my dear friend Shelley Rahim back to the space. She's been here before. Shelley is someone I met in 2018, and she was one of our very first students in the Conscious Postpartum Caregiver program. And as I was welcoming her into this space, just remarking about how incredibly important it is to me to keep this connection alive with Shelley, because she really is embodying exactly what it is that I envisioned as we collectively were creating this school and this, mission to support postpartum care in the world. And I'm so in love with what you are creating, but also, what we're all kind of creating together. And this conversation specifically is to really highlight some key things that Shelley has done in her business development, and also how we're really honoring the sister sciences of yoga and Ayurveda together, and how that is really a huge pillar of how we are approaching wellness for longevity in our work and for ourselves. So Shelley is from San Diego, California. She is a birth doula, an Ayurvedic postpartum doula. She teaches prenatal yoga. She teaches other things such as newborn care. She has some online classes. She's trained with birthing from within. Shelley is doing amazing things in this field, and you'll have all of her information in the show notes to look all those things up. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you, Christine. I'm so honored to be here. You and your program and all of the wonderful women in it, you're with me every time I take care of a postpartum mama. You guys have been a really big part of my career, and the work you're doing is absolutely just fundamental for the health of mothers and women. So thank you so much for bringing me back.
Oh, you are more than welcome. It's truly an honor. And I just want to begin with acknowledging how you came into this work already practicing yoga. You were a prenatal yoga instructor. You were doing postnatal yoga, mommy and me yoga. What originally drew you to becoming a yoga instructor for this demographic of people?
So interestingly, I had my first two babies when I was really young. I was 19 and 23. So back in 1992 and 95. I had not done yoga, but then I started doing yoga in 1999. And in 2007, I gave birth to my third child, and he's now 18. But what I realized was that as I was practicing yoga for those 6 or 7 years before I gave birth, I was like, this is tailor made for birth. Why isn't every single mama should be doing yoga to prepare for birth? It's embodied. Birth is an embodied experience. Yoga is embodied. All of these positions, the movements, the breathing, the mindfulness, it's all birth. And it's embodied. So I took a prenatal yoga training actually at Kripalu. I flew from San Diego. There wasn't really any prenatal yoga trainings in 2006 in Southern California, and I was 8 months pregnant, and I'm like, I need to get trained in this. So I went to Massachusetts. I did a training, and then when my son was 1 in 2007, I'm sorry, he was born in 2006. I did the training in 2005, and I started teaching when he was 1. And so that was my entrance into working with families, was I felt the call to do birth work even when I was young at age 19 and gave birth, and I just like loved giving birth. But then, my path took me different direction, and I entered it back into it with yoga. So I started teaching prenatal yoga, and then I quickly learned that if I'm going to work with mothers and birthing people, that I need to understand trauma. And so I started studying with Pam England in birth story medicine, and I learned how to help mamas, heal their birth stories and actually prevent trauma. So in my classes, everything I say, the words I say, the way I guide them, it can either be really empowering or it can also plant seeds of trauma. So I had to really work on my own biases, and I had to do a lot of deep work with birth story medicine. And then I started teaching prenatal birth classes, and so that's how I got into birth work. But the yoga has been with me ever since, both professionally and personally, in all the aspects of work that I do, whether it's birth classes. I taught couples prenatal yoga as a sort of childbirth preparation for many years, or whether it's, in the birth itself, bringing the yoga yoga into the birth experience for myself to keep myself grounded and in check, the personal self-awareness, whether it's postpartum work, I bring in and I'm helping my clients, learn how to really breathe in their belly and then exhale and draw their perineum up to really help them start that healing. Or whether it's for me so that I can self-regulate and I can, do my breathing, I can take a pause. I have these skills that yoga has taught me as a practitioner. So it's been with me through my entire 18-year career.
It's amazing. I remember I had forgotten that you trained at Kripalu. That's where I went to the School of Ayurveda, the Kripalu School of Ayurveda.
Right.
And I remember, my firstborn was about a year old when I started that
Oh,
education. And, one thing they told us when we're coming into the program is you need to develop a regular yoga practice. That's really a requirement for entering into the Ayurvedic program, the Ayurvedic lifestyle. And I had done it sporadically, but I realized then how integrated these two paths were. And my very first teacher there was David Frowley, and he taught about, sort of the background of Ayurveda, the philosophy of Ayurveda. And we learned that, from the way he taught it was that yoga is really about the spiritual path, and it's about the subtle path. And we think of yoga as these physical movements, but when we only think of it that way, we're missing the greater significance of, like you mentioned, the regulation of the ability to center and really see clearly what's needed, or whether it's ourselves going through birth or postpartum or whether we're the one doing the care. It gives us the ability to show up in the way that we want to show up on a subtle level. And so the Ayurvedic piece of it is coming in to balance the body, to treat the body, to keep homeostasis in the body. And so we have these two paths, which often are referred to as sister sciences, to really create the whole picture of the life that we want to live, which is feeling happy, feeling joyful, feeling healthy, feeling, like we can do all the things that we want to do and experience all the things that we want to experience. So when I really, widen out in yoga and Ayurveda, for me, they've blended into all the areas of my life in their own way. So even if I'm not going to a yoga class religiously every week or every other day or whatever it may be, I feel like I'm living it through how I have learned to operate in life, through my breath, through my behavior, through my choices, through the way I move. It's become part of my fabric. And I think that is the gift of Ayurveda and those Vedic sciences, yoga being one of them, is that we really almost like bring out this natural blueprint that we already have and recognize it as this way of being in the universe. I just went really, really far out and heady right there. But that's what comes for me. It's like so powerful, and we have the ability to learn it. We have the gift of these sciences that are here for us.
Oh, that was so beautifully said. And that's what we want to model, right? For our clients, for our students. So it is so important that we live it, and we're constantly practicing, and it's a discipline too, that we have to really keep working on. Otherwise, as a birth doula, if we don't honor that blueprint within us, and kind of know when we're falling off that balance, or we've fallen off that path, or we've gotten out of balance, if then we can very quickly become very burnt out in this work that's really, really emotionally and physically very demanding.
Yeah, it's really true. And that's a big part of why we're having the conversations that we're having around business and creating conscious businesses that support us as caregivers, because so many people will come into the field with huge passion, huge purpose, but not feel like they can sustain that through the actual business, which brings in resources to continue to support them, financial, community, all of these things that we need to keep us moving forward. And you've created a practice that does that, that keeps the momentum of your forward movement, and you continue to be able to move forward towards new goals and new experiences because you're held from a really strong foundation. And so, as we look at the way that you've combined the pillars of prenatal yoga, I think we can look at that a little specifically, because, our listeners didn't hear this beautiful comment that you made before we recorded, but how you are feeling. And I actually wrote down that word continuum before I got on this call with you, because that's what I was feeling, is that you have created the way that you see the childbearing year, the way that you see even beyond. I feel like it's a continuum. We cannot really isolate, like, oh, I only do this and I'm just going to chop off all the other things, because the whole experience with families is a continuum. And so you have created this continuum through prenatal yoga, birth doula care, and Ayurvedic postpartum care. And of course, there's like so much more on the continuum that we honor and recognize, but these three pillars have really helped to structure your business. And I want to know from you, a lot of things, but I would love to just ask you, how has that sort of these three pillars that you have put into place in your business, how has that supported you in the business that you've built financially and also just structurally?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's given me a breadth of knowledge of what a birthing person, what a mother goes through, to that process of going from maiden to mother, with the childbirth experience being the catalyst for her birth of herself, and that new phase of womanhood, matrescence, right? So I feel like the only really way to understand that is to go through it, yes, but also to walk side by side, with families through that whole continuum. So I've been blessed to have the trust of my students and my clients that said, "Hey, Shelley, I was a prenatal yoga teacher, but being in my classes, they just were like, can you please just come to my birth?" Okay, okay, sure. I'm not a birth doula yet, but if you feel like you trust me and you want me there, I'll be there. And so I started going to births, and wow, okay, I understand now how to prepare them for this. As a prenatal yoga instructor, which I bring in a lot of birthing from within. It's like my prenatal yoga classes they're like childbirth education, but they're also like sisterhood circle time. They're a lot more than just like a 1 hour yoga class where we move our bodies. So I've taken a lot of risks in just bringing in a lot of stuff. into these classes. But then they trust me, right? And they ask me, please just be my doula. Okay. And then I get a doula training eventually. And then and then it's like, but you just fed me this amazing meal after birth. You brought bone broth and you brought congee. Like, can you keep feeding me at home? And your massage, your touch skills in birth, like, can you massage me at home too during postpartum? Well, okay, yes, yes. So everything has come to me when it felt like the time was right to start doing the work. And then I'll find a training at some point, okay, I should probably train in this, but I've been blessed to be able to walk the path of preparing for them prenatally, going through, I've been to over 200 births now. So it's like, okay, I kind of understand how birth works. So now when I teach prenatally, here's what I really need to give them in these classes, physically, but also mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Here's what they need. And then, okay, now I've been to these births and I see what it does to their bodies and how vulnerable they are. I see it. I'm there in that energy. And then, okay, that first week after birth, I really know they need to rest, and I know what they really need now. I'm there with them during that postpartum time. So it's been like hands-on in the field education that you cannot get in a university. And what you guys give is absolutely, that huge complement to what I was kind of already doing. But the embodied work is, I feel, the greatest gift. And so in that, I have this understanding of 17 years in the field, on that spectrum of the continuum from pregnancy all the way to the first 40 days postpartum, that I just feel like I can zoom out and I can really understand the needs, not only just what their physical needs are for nourishment, but what their emotional needs are from the birth experience. Maybe there was some trauma, and I can hold them in that. I can help them heal in real time during postpartum. They don't have to wait 6 months or a year to go to a therapist, and maybe they still will, but at least we're doing a lot of that work in real time of processing. So it's all culminated for me after a good 15 years of in the field work to be able to really serve mamas from that place of embodied experience.
I love so much how it just happens so naturally. Like you just saw, you were called to the yoga, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, it's leading me right here. And then it was like, oh, now I'm doing these births, and there's a need here after birth that's calling me. And that just to me highlights the absolute natural pathway that you've taken almost, I mean, nothing is by accident, right? But you've just listened and been guided by following what you were being invited to experience and to do. And it's so beautiful. And I also am noticing, in listening to you and what I do know of, some of the clients you've worked with and your experiences, is that the understanding that you have of your individual clients, but also of sort of the continuum itself, it lends itself to being so much more prepared in your heart and in your mind and in your consciousness for serving in the best way, because you're not like stepping into an unknown situation where you don't know what their pregnancy was like, you don't know what their birth was like, you don't know what their home life is like, you don't know all these things. And we're more limited with what we can step in and do right away when all those things are unknown. And so much for me I mean, honestly, everything is connection and relationship and building trusting relationships with people in our lives. And for clients, when we develop a trusting relationship with them during pregnancy, as we're educating, as we're supporting them, they feel so much more ready to surrender to being cared for when they feel that. So it's really a beautiful story, and I love that it just happened naturally in the way it did. And I'm inviting, people who are in postpartum caregiving, who are considering postpartum caregiving to really look at how can I open my business up to a natural flow like that? And that doesn't mean that we have to go to births. I know for me, when I was doing birth doula work, I had really little ones at home. And I was like, wow, this is going to have to pause until
Yeah,
I can be in a different, situation. So
for sure.
number one is like finding the ways of serving that fit naturally into our lives and what we're already doing.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways that that can be done. But yeah, and what does it look like now for, like you mentioned briefly again before we started recording, that for you, your clients immediately come in through the prenatal yoga. And do you feel like how has that supported your postpartum caregiving practice?
Yeah, so that, like you said, that, I am a guide. And I kind of sometimes feel like with my prenatal yoga classes, I'm almost like a community doula. And I'm there, I stay after class, I answer questions. Mamas come in just thinking, oh, I'm going to just do some yoga and move my body and breathe. But they get a lot more. They get this like sisterhood support. They get a theme where we're talking about something very pertinent to birth or motherhood. And then they're like, oh, wow, all this stuff is opening up for me. And so, and so, yeah, can you say the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm curious about how your, prenatal yoga experience and your clients that you're working with through those classes, how that is supporting your postpartum caregiving
Right.
services.
Sorry, this postpartum services. Yeah. So there I am. I'm spending all this time and building that trust, and I become like a guide or a mentor. And they feel my heart. They feel connected to how I'm guiding them and teaching them. And so then a lot of times they naturally will look like they want to hire me to be their doula, or they want to hire me to, do postpartum work with them. So I think that it's really important as a business owner, if you want to do postpartum work, that it's really helpful to have some sort of connection to pregnant mamas out there, pregnant people, right? So maybe you aren't a prenatal yoga teacher, but maybe you can reach out to your local, birth center and offer just, women's circles, pregnancy circles where you're talking about, have a different topic each week, or find a way to bring mothers together and guide them so that you can build that rapport with them prenatally. Yeah, that's kind
It-
of,
And it's
mhm.
such a gift to be able to provide the space for these people to come together at a time where, if it's their first child specifically, they may not have other friends who are having babies yet. They may not have family or friends that can really relate to what they're going through, and to provide a space, a physical space for people to come together and relate to one another and share their experiences with people who get it, who understand. This cannot be overstated. It is such an invaluable gift to communities to offer spaces such as this. So yes, we can think of it as, helping to build our practices, but this is one of the most meaningful roles that I have ever filled,
Mhm.
is to be that space holder.
And especially more now than ever, because I've been doing this for 17 years before the internet, really. I mean, back in, in 2006, we didn't have as much information all over the internet, right? We didn't really have social media back then, or really at all. And so now the biggest thing I hear from students in my classes when I ask them, so in my newborn care class, I always ask the question when they introduce themselves. I have them finish this sentence. I'm excited to be a parent, except or but, then they kind of share what their concern is. And what I hear a lot is, I'm bombarded with so much information. I'm just overwhelmed. I don't even know who to, like, what to believe, what to do. It's too much information. And so what we've lost is this like this understanding of how important it is to have a trusting human being guide that they can actually ask questions to and get answers that come from wisdom, that come from a place of love, non-biased, support. And so when you're a human being in a body that they can come to and say, hey, you know what? I'm having this concern. Like, I don't know. I almost called my doctor. I almost went to the ER. What do you think? And I give them oh, hey, you know what? That's really normal. But you can always call your doctor, but it's just the baby rotating. It's pretty normal, those feelings. Or so it's just there's so much collective anxiety out there, and then going online and trying to get information, get answers almost creates more anxiety if you can just have somebody. So for us, having this experience, practitioners in this field, putting ourselves out there as a safe place for families to go to get information that they feel like they can trust from a human being, like in person. It's almost like a lost lost art nowadays, or it's something that we're not really even like looking for or know where to begin to look, because we're just so used to looking online for our answers and information. So yes, it is a service to these families that is going to reduce anxiety. It's going to help them learn to trust others. It's going to help them learn to trust themselves when they're giving birth, and when they're, birthing themselves as a mother during that time afterwards. It's huge.
Shelley, what like is it like a sort of guest like percentage of clients that hire you for either postpartum or birth care through your prenatal classes?
I would say I get maybe like 65% are my prenatal yoga students. And then I would say maybe like 15% referrals, or like maybe referrals and like second time birthing
Mhm.
parents. And then maybe like 10%, or I don't know what percentage I'm at now, but 10 or 15% would be like people that just find me online, and then we do like a Zoom consult and they hire me. But yeah, a good 65% would be my prenatal yoga students.
That's amazing. And I also feel like the ability to offer classes ahead of time really helps to do that education piece that's
Yeah.
so important
Yeah.
for just helping along the healing process. It's really not effective to have the postpartum doula be in charge of the healing. And then like they come in and then, we need them to know ahead of time, like these are some helpful things that you can do on a daily basis. These are ways that your partner can help you. These are ways that you can prepare your home and your spaces to help this process be smooth and easy. And so I love, how you described that sort of circle, sisterhood, the ability to just be in community. It's so much more than, moving your body to alleviate pain and maybe your hips. It's really about feeling good in your hips and feeling good in your heart and in your community.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it so much. And how did you find your first place to teach, and where are the spaces that you have taught in?
Yeah, that was really tricky because I had done my training. Didn't really, my yoga teacher I've been practicing with, for 6 years, it wasn't the right place to teach a prenatal yoga. They didn't have that demographic in that area. So I had to kind of branch out and just go out to yoga studios and be like, hey, I'm just a trained prenatal yoga teacher. Do you have room? Can I teach here? And I did. I started at a yoga studio. And then when that one closed down, another one opened, and I taught there, and I'm still at that one. It closed down during the pandemic, but then it went online. And then anyways, so yeah, so just like went out and just put myself out there at yoga studios. I've also taught at like community centers, like I taught at the Jewish Community Center. I taught at youth through the hospital through UCSD Medical Center, prenatal yoga over there. And yeah, so there's so many places, look at for like wellness centers that are focused on like families, places like that. And just start putting yourself out there. If you have a prenatal yoga training, for sure. It's so important for mamas to have access to prenatal yoga.
Oh, it is such a gift. So I'm excited, and hopefully, Shelley, you'll be able to join us for our upcoming event on November 20th. Those of you who are listening after the fact, I'm sure we'll have a recording and the opportunity, but we're collaborating with um, Corinne Andrews from Shraddha Yoga, the author of Birthing Mama, who's going to be really collaborating with Sacred Window Studies ongoing to bring prenatal and postnatal yoga training together with Ayurvedic postpartum care, and really like just embracing how natural of a connection these skills are. But I also just want to bring it back to what we started with about how this is a foundational skill set for resiliency for us as women, as caregivers, as humans in this world, which, as we, just explored for pregnancy, there's just so much information and there's a lot of collective anxiety. So we're all needing pathways for peace in our hearts, in our work, so that we can keep showing up for potentially long shifts of care, or the family that's struggling, or those times where our communities are needing support in a way that we might be called to step in and do so. We begin with ourselves. We have to embody it. We have to do our own work so that we feel ready and capable to support others, if that's what our calling is. And if people are listening to this podcast, they're probably called to be a support person. So this is, and it's something that I have found myself with Ayurvedic postpartum skill set. It's about, like, I'm still using it. My youngest is 7. I'm not in the sacred window, but without that training, I would probably be a completely different. I can't even imagine what my life would be without the opening that gave me to become the way that I feel today, which is really centered and grateful and joyful about my life. And so I see this as, number one, taking care of ourselves. Number two, finding a sustainable path for us to continue to care for others. And to just keep creating. And I love all the things that you're creating. I'm so grateful for your perspective in this conversation, and I want people to look at your ebooks that you have. Shelley's been working on a cookbook that I'm so excited for that to come to fruition, and it will. It's going to come soon. But how do you recommend people get started if they're feeling called to this?
To the yogic path?
I guess, yeah. Yeah, let's start with that,
Yeah.
because that's in this conversation, that's kind of in the beginning.
Yeah, I think that what you mentioned is, we need to have skills to self-regulate. We need to have the self-awareness. We need to have sangha. We need community, right? So all those 8 limbs of yoga, it's much more than just the postures, the movements, and it's breath, it's self-awareness, it's community, it's Ayurveda. And all of these things are life skills for us to stay grounded, centered, and to be able to be in really intense situations if they arise, and able to really move through that with self-awareness and with wisdom to be able to support our clients. And so for me, I just found, a yoga training that resonated. I started with prenatal yoga training, And then I did, more advanced level trainings, but you have to have a 200-hour, I think, as well. So find a training and just have a foundation in yoga. Perhaps, your own practice. It might look like practicing yoga a couple times a week or every day, but for me, I don't practice daily anymore. It's more of an integrated, I do practice a couple times a week, but I don't get up in the morning every day at 4 a.m. and practice yoga, right? I went through my phase where I did that, but it just becomes part of your own, how you move through the world. And so it gives you skills and tools to process the work you're doing, the relationships you're in, and things like that. So yeah, I would say if you feel called to bringing yoga into your career option, I would just find a training and take an in-person training for sure, and start teaching. Just do it. Mhm.
Shelley, thank you so much for being here with me, and I'm excited to see you again soon. For those of you who are looking for support in this, you have it. I know Shelley is committed to supporting this field, as are we.
Yeah.
So please reach out, share this episode with someone who you think might love it. And Shelley, until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Christine.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. And our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.